Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group. Today we're going to be talking about the proposal process, and this is proposal time of year. That's all I'll say. We've got a lot of proposal interest out there for people working with groups. Open enrollment season, even if it's not groups that are re-enrolling, I think whenever this conversation is brought up yearly and it's time to reevaluate, re-choose your benefits, it gets groups thinking about how they may be able to expand their benefits, changes that they need to make to their existing benefits, right? So I think this time of year is really providing a lot of interest in exploring group long-term care, whether it be from groups who are saving some money on their medical premiums and feel like they have room to expand to a new benefit, or it's a re-enrolling group that has decided that they want to explore options to potentially move to a new plan offering. I'm sick of the experience that I have with my current plan. What can I do to find a home where I may not have this headache? So we're going to do a little bit of a walk through the proposal process, but I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot to the actual process besides requesting that proposal. There's a process that we've developed that really help you make this far less of a headache. But I just kind of want to go through some of the best practices for the proposal process and really what you can do to help level set with the group and really give them as much information as possible before that formal proposal comes back. And what is a group proposal for long-term care, and how does that differ from just like an individual quote, right? So I'll hop right into it. Feel free to ask any questions that you have in the chat, or if you're working on a specific case, you don't have to give me any particular details. But if you have help that you need, I'm happy to talk through that with you as well. So, what is a group proposal? How does it differ from, say, an individual quote? A group proposal is really, in this case, an offer. Okay, a quote on the individual side, they actually expressly state it right in most illustrations. This is not an offer of coverage. We have to underwrite you first and find out if you're health and financially qualified for this product. But on the group side, when a carrier generates a proposal, they're doing two things. And I've said this before. They are quoting, right? They are giving you a certain level of coverage that represents your maximums. They're giving you certain eligibility rules, but they're also underwriting you, right? So they are underwriting you based on a number of factors. How big is the group? What is the gender blend? What is the demographic? What kind of industry are we dealing with, right? Um, is there employer funding that's part of this plan or not? What state are they in, right? All of these things kind of determine how a group carrier is going to underwrite your specific group. And I think carriers have different ranges of outcomes depending on all of those underwriting factors. For example, some carriers may give out very similar pricing or identical pricing for every single group, but other carriers are going to say we actually have different rate classes. And depending on how well we like the group, maybe there's a lot of disposable income, right, to be able to purchase a voluntary plan. We like high female gender blend groups. We like groups that skew younger. That may get you actually more favorable rates with some carriers. So just know that a proposal is a quote and it's an underwriting decision. essentially. The carrier will honor if they've given you a proposal and they say, okay, we're ready to enroll, as long as everything matches up with what you've submitted for that proposal and all of the information they've been given and know about the group, they're going to allow you to enroll. Okay, so it is essentially more of an offer of coverage than on the individual side. So that's an important thing to know for a couple of reasons. Number one, it kind of lets you know where you are in the process. If you've gotten a proposal back, the carrier is interested, right? At the end of the day, this is not just somebody sitting behind a sales desk and sending you a quote and saying, "Well, we'll see if you can get through underwriting. We'll see on the other side." This is something that the carrier is interested in the business. But number two, it means it's not as simple as just generating a quote. A lot of people are involved in making sure that when a proposal is sent out, it's something that the carrier feels good about, right? And especially this time of year with a ton of interest, one of the things that can happen is that the carriers have a very large queue of proposals that they have to go through, that they have to quote and underwrite for groups. Um, they know quite well that not every group is going to enroll, so they may be, proposing cases that are very serious. I want to enroll next week if I can. And they're also proposing groups that are saying, I just want to take a look at this, right? So that creates a lot of proposal volume for them, and it's generally a lot of time to process those proposals. So I would say when you're talking to groups about the process, number one, not just a shameless plug, but I think you should be using our tools before and or at the same time you're requesting a proposal so that you can give them as much information as possible about what they are likely to end up with. What is the carrier likely to come back with for an offer? Because the proposals generally we see 7 to 10 days. Oftentimes we can see quicker, but oftentimes, especially in open enrollment season where there's a lot of activity going on, it may take even a little longer. So that is why we've really developed these tools, not only to help you on the pre-sale side and help you get an understanding of what's the right product fit, what do the rates generally look like for a group X size, what benefit amounts do we normally see the carrier come back with? Um, but also, when you get the proposal back, you may not see the information that you are expecting. Obviously, you're going to get your underwriting offer, right? You're going to get a pricing table, but you're not going to get something that is as in depth as you can imagine. Diane took us through a Securian illustration on Tuesday's study group. There's a lot of in-depth information there. You're not going to get that same level of information. So that's another huge reason why we developed a lot of these tools is to give you something that's going to give you the information that the group is looking for because again, it's not going to be the same standard of information. The proposal is really for the purpose of memorializing that underwriting offer that you've gotten and putting those terms out there clearly. It is not so much a brochure. It will talk about what riders you have available in your plans. It's not going to really be for informational purposes. It's really going to be, again, more for this is documentation of what we have offered your group, right? So when we tell you to use Product Buddy and we harp on Product Buddy and we sound like broken records, it's because this one pager is going to give you in clear language, answers to a lot of the questions that the group has that the proposal may not answer, right? So it's going to give a lot of the guarantees, product features, again, who's eligible, what are the long-term care benefits, and What are some sample rates? It's going to give you those quick answers. It's going to give you pricing and value because I've never seen a group proposal that looks like this and puts it right out in front of you as opposed to having to sift through, 17 to 20 pages, you know, 13 to 15 of which are not going to matter to your group, right? So I think even when you have a formal proposal in hand, you are going to want to refer to Product Buddy. You're going to want to refer to the group quick quote to help people understand their pricing within the plan. You're going to want, to use the census quote to get the employer to understand their employer funded costs. And again, if the proposal comes back with different items, a lot of what these one pagers are designed to do is to say, for your group size, you can see this one pager says for 5 to 49 employees. This is what we generally see for an offer if we are being conservative. We are going to show what we typically see or at the floor of what we normally see for a group rather than overpromise and have a proposal come in with the benefits that are less than what we're advertising, right? That's something we had in mind as we were building these because if it's before you're even requesting a proposal or as you're waiting for the proposal to come back, again, you want to give them something to go off of, but you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. We would rather underpromise. And if the carrier knocks our socks off with an offer and we're saying 75,000 death benefit, 150,000 long-term care, and they come back with 100,000 GI or they come back with 125,000 GI, that's a really nice surprise. That won't be every case, right? So we have to make sure that expectations are set, but enough information is given so they understand what's going on, right? So I think that is the key. Set expectations, give enough interest so that they can understand the product, the pricing, and the process. How will the process actually work? Um, and just keep them up to date on the timetables, right? So, what this all really comes together to say is that the most important thing about the formal proposal is the offer of coverage, the acceptance of the group. Now, the group may not always be a good candidate for the carrier. And we don't see this often at all, but the carrier could come back and say, sorry, this one's a DTQ, decline to quote. I'd say this generally happens a bit more when we're working with larger carriers like Chubb and Trustmark, and we've got a 150 life group, and we want to see if it's a possibility. In those cases, if demographics or amount of employer funding, whatever it may be, doesn't come back in line with what they want to see, they'll say, hey, sorry, man, but this is a DTQ, right? Or we're doing non-employer business and the carrier's kind of done due diligence on the organization we're presenting to them. They may say, hey, sorry, DTQ, right? But those are honestly few and far between. Hazardous occupations that the carrier doesn't feel comfortable insuring, sorry, we don't feel like this is good risk for us, DTQ. They don't want to put that out there. The carrier will actually decline to quote it because of what the proposal means, right? We are offering you this if you would like to enroll it, right? The proposal process is also not just an open and shut case, right? So you get a proposal back from the carrier, and it's not as if there isn't the possibility for wiggle room, right? There are a couple of areas where we can negotiate, right? So there are several sort of bargaining chips to be able to do that. If you get a good offer right off the bat and you're happy with it, so be it, right? But if there are things like this plan says employees have to be actively at work at least 30 hours to qualify for coverage, and the group says, well, we make everybody benefit eligible at 20 hours a week, that's something you can talk to the carrier about and most likely have adjusted. The carrier is, again, very open to those kind of things. They want these plans to work, um, you know, the way other benefits that the group has works. But also, maybe we add another line of coverage. Maybe we do some employer funding, or maybe we step up the level of employer funding and ask the carrier, if we do this, would we be able to get a higher GI limit? Would we be able to get simplified issue underwriting where we might not be able to get it? Those things can be negotiated on. You won't always get a yes answer, right? But at the end of the day, the carrier is willing to work with you and hear what you have to say and bargain with you, so to speak. You're not going to see that as much on the individual side of the house. Maybe in underwriting with providing more information, you might turn a decline into an approval, but the rules are essentially the rules there at the end of the day. So that's an interesting piece. But when you're working with your group, provide them th all the information that you can before you're actually getting that formal proposal back, early on in the conversations. Give them the product specs, give them employer funded figures to look at, give them whatever rates that you can, and really try to get yourself, if you can, down to a couple of finalist products because it can be a lot to sift through, to be comparing four carriers and six products, right? Um, your size segment may sort that out for you. Your state may sort that out for you, but kind of keep a narrow focus. I think for us, it's helpful for us if we can get down to two finalists and kind of compare them side by side, um, and go from there. It makes the group's decision making all that much easier. So I want to just pause for a second and see if there are any questions at this moment. Um, and then I think maybe we'll dive into a proposal or two and kind of pick out the most important pieces from the proposal. So, does anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts on what we've talked about so far before we jump to the next piece? Okay. So, why don't we just take a look at a few proposals? These are sample proposals that I believe we may have demoed on the study group before. But let me share some. We've got confidentiality in here. This is a Chubb proposal. And I think when you get any proposal back, to figure out where you ended up benefits wise, you should always go down. Each carrier is going to have this handy dandy little table here that looks similar to this. This is essentially your underwriting offer. Okay. So this gives you your benefit maximums, it gives you your underwriting tiers, and it gives you your eligibility, which again, group to group can change, right? So it gives you your guaranteed issue max, who is eligible under employee coverage, and it gives you your maximum benefit amount. So 100,000 death benefit is the most that somebody ages 19 through 70 who's an employee can purchase without medical underwriting. Conditional guaranteed issue triggering a couple health questions, that's 150,000 for that same segment of people. Simplified issue, even more health questions, 5 to 7 health questions. Again, same age group, but up to 225,000. And then for those 71 through 80, we have a capped amount, and they are always simplified issue underwriting. And then for spouses, you see the same thing, 19 through 70, For conditional and simplified issue, there's your benefit amounts. So this is one of the most important pages of every proposal. I'll show you where it exists on each of these. So if we go to an Allstate proposal, we scroll down just a bit, and here it is on the Allstate proposal, looking very, very similar, but they have employee, working spouse, non-working spouse, and they have issue ages for GI, what the benefit maximums are, SI issue ages, and what those benefit maximums are. Transamerica is going to be the same old story. We get a table that looks like this. Guaranteed issue, CGI, if we're able to access it, and simplified issue, okay? And what participation requirements are there. In this case, we have spouse GI here, spouse CGI, and spouse simplified issue. Trustmark does things pretty similarly, I would say. Employee, spouse, what's their minimum amounts, what's their GI, what's their modified guaranteed issue, and what's their simplified issue amounts. So this is kind of where you're going to go to do your comparisons between carriers as you're doing them. But going back to the beginning with Chubb, another important page that they will generally have is what riders did they give us, right? And how are those riders going to work for this group? So you can see accelerated death benefit rider for terminal illness, our accelerated death benefit for long-term care, that's our long-term care rider, extension of benefits, and restoration of the death benefit. Now, Chubb's restoration of death benefit can vary from state to state, so it's important to read this specific part. So you can see they restore 50% of the death benefit in this case up to a maximum of $50,000, and you can see who qualifies for that. When we look at Allstate, I believe we have something like that in here. Give me one. Rider benefits. Accelerated death benefit for long-term care with restoration of benefits and extension of benefits. You see Chubb kind of piecemealed those out. Allstate says it to you all in one breath. So you can see benefit of up to 17 months. And the restoration benefit restores the death benefit and cash value on a monthly basis to pre-acceleration amounts. After 100% of the death benefit has been used as a monthly advance, the extension of benefits extends that monthly advance for up to an additional 17 months, providing up to 34 total months of benefit. So you can also see portability, you can see conversion privilege in here. So you're going to get a lot of information, but a lot of it, I don't think it's worth going through the formal proposal cover to cover with a group. You're going to lose them if you can't kind of present it succinctly in a way that they can follow along. So Transamerica has an interesting little waiver of monthly deductions for layoff or strike as a rider, which is pretty nice. Accelerated benefit for terminal condition. You can see long-term care rider that's here, the extension of benefits rider, and the benefit restoration rider. And I believe somewhere in here they actually define those. I could be wrong. But they also, in Transamerica's case and in all of these carriers, will take you through eligibility. If it's not mentioned on a little table like Chubb, you can actually see their full eligibility rules, right? Even for child coverage, which they'll often highlight in here. So I don't want to just bash the proposal and say the proposal doesn't matter. You can see eligibility here with Trustmark. You can see part-time and full-time eligibility, permanent W-2 employees. And for riders, we can see accelerated death benefit, benefit restoration and extension of home health and long-term care, home health and long-term care, interim term endorsement. So you can see carry loop benefit is included here as well. So you can get a lot of information, but it's up to you to be able to put that in plain English for your group. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a tour of each proposal and kind of give you an idea of the highlights. But it's important to remember that you are responsible for kind of breaking down that information in a helpful way. So when you're working with your group, again, get your materials ready ahead of time using the buddy system tools. Let them know that you're requesting a formal proposal, which is essentially we are quoting and underwriting the group with the carrier, seeing if they are an acceptable risk to the carrier. I would always say plan for at least 10 days for the proposal to turn around, again, because you'll generally have a good surprise unless the carrier is really kind of overloaded. And just keep providing updates throughout the process. But they will be very satisfied with the amount of information that you've given them and what they'll likely end up with as an offer in the meantime until that proposal comes back. Our goal is to give them enough good info to be able to dive into about, their anywhere from really 1 to 6 product options between the 4 carriers that we work with. They'll have enough to keep them busy as they're waiting for that formal proposal. So that's really the key there. We don't want to leave them with nothing for so long that they're just kind of wondering what happened. I think even if there's, not much to be able to update on, it's good to just send an update every once in a while throughout the process. They may want to revisit some of the materials that you've left behind with them. I think that's kind of the most important pieces as far as the proposal process goes and how we level set with a group. And also let them know that things are obviously very flexible. Now, when we submit a request for proposal, I'll give you an idea of our RFP form, but it is very similar to the quote request. Updates on all my outstanding application on once. That's a great tactic. I think taking time once a week to be able to go through it is great. Any system helps. So in the buddy system, this is really how you request a quote from us from the carriers. So this is a lot of the information that the carrier is going to want to know. This is what our RFP form looks like. Who's the broker? What's their email? What's the group name and where are they located? Where are we going to cite us this thing? Are they an employer or non-employer group? How many lives do they have, either employees or members? How many lives are they going to fund if they're considering employer funding? What is their general industry or occupation of the group? When do you plan to enroll this? And we don't need an actual month if you don't have one in mind specifically, but just know that the earliest effective date that we can generally enroll something is anywhere from 60 to 90 days from that RFP form submission. There's a lot of things that generally need to be put together. An enrollment platform needs to be set up. If you're going to be using marketing and landing pages and webinars with us for your group, all of that takes a lot of time to set up. Now, for a small group that's full employer funded and nobody's buying up, we may be able to hit a quicker timeline than that, but you don't have to have a specific month in mind if you don't have one, if you don't have a specific objective here. So that's an important piece to know. You can just set it for 2 to 3 months out if you'd like. And what products are you going to be looking at for the group? Most groups that we work with are looking just for long-term care, but some want to see other products. So we kind of make those available, and you can select a specific carrier here if you'd like. So we have Allstate, their term to 100. We have Chubb, we have Transamerica. So you can throw that in there. Requested by date, we say allow 5 to 10 business days for a response. I would lean toward 10, again, just to set expectations right. Your BGA, and then give us any context that you have about the opportunity. Is there going to be any sort of employer funding? Anything else that we really need to know about the group? And we take this information and we send it to the carrier. So that is really how, if you're wanting to work through us, that's how you set us up to be able to start that proposal process with the carriers. And you can use our tools in the meantime as you're waiting for that proposal to come back. Um, if you don't want, our interim involvement in helping you secure the proposals, just let us know. We can introduce you to our carrier contacts at each carrier. If you've used the tools already and you're like, I have an idea of who I want to get a proposal from, and all I really need is the right person to get a hold of and how to present them that information, we can help you with that too. So we have a PDF that you can fill out for whatever groups that you want to propose. We can introduce you to the carrier contact. And if you still want to enroll it with us and you still want our support throughout that process, that's fine. I would recommend you keep us copied on the correspondence to the carrier. But many folks say, I would just rather submit it while I can and, be copied on everything and really get the pulse as we're moving through the proposal process. I'd like to check in on it on my own. I'd like to send it on my own. And when I get it back, I'd like to get it back from the carrier, even if I've got you guys copied on the correspondence. That also works well for us. Um, Frankly, that helps us help more people with their cases. If you take over that piece and send those items directly to the carrier, all you need is a filled out request for proposal form and you need a census. So those are the only two items you need. Most people, when they're coming to us and they're filling out that form, they have a census in hand already. So that's always a good piece to be able to ask for. Um, from the group directly, but it doesn't take much to be able to get a quote going, and you've got a lot of information to provide the group once you are at that point. So that's really all I had planned for today to just kind of talk through the proposal process. I guess the last thing I would leave you with is one of the important things about requesting a proposal directly from the carrier is you get some insulation from competition. Okay, so these carriers generally have rules that say if this group was quoted by another broker in the last 6 months, 12 months, whatever it may be for each specific carrier, we will not allow any other brokers to quote it without some form of release, right? So the group would need to fill out some sort of release to release the quote from their old broker and start a new one with a new broker. So that is, I think, an underrated piece of this process. If you have a feeling that the group may enroll, even if you're not completely certain, it's good to get that proposal and find out if you can get that offer because that also protects you as the broker on the case from anybody else jumping in the meantime and trying to quote the same group, right? So that that definitely helps, right? Yeah, you're essentially putting on a shield, exactly. So that's one of the things where it's like if I have so much information from using the sales tools and just knowing what I know, do I really need to hurry to get a formal proposal? I would say if there's any chance that you're going to be in competition with other organizations, other brokers, it's in your best interest to just get the proposal at the end of the day. And you can go back and refresh proposals if it's been a certain amount of time, just to confirm. You can check in with the carrier rep and say, hey, is this due for a refresh? I know we've had this quote out for, a couple months now. Do we need a refresh on this? I think they're ready to enroll, right? So just wanted to get that piece of info out there as well. This is really just designed to give you an idea of what goes on in this um, pretty short window of the process overall. Is just understanding what we're going to ask for on the proposal. So we're going to ask for obviously the max guaranteed issue we can get. We're always asking for the extension of benefits rider. We're always asking for restoration of death benefit where we can. Um, and in many cases, if you have any other special requests, we include that on the RFP form as well. So That's really what we're submitting. It's a very short window of the process, but this is essentially detailing everything, after we've had a pre-sale conversation up to we're trying to get them to say yes and we have a proposal in hand, and potentially move on to enrolling the case. So it's a short window of time, but there's some um, interesting pieces in that this part of the process that I think are worth detailing. So I will stop it there and see if anybody has any questions or any cases that they're working on that they want to, ask for advice or help about. I am here for anything you guys need. Floor is yours if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll wrap it up and get you out of here a little early. Don't be shy, I don't bite. And if it's really cut and dry, I'm happy for that too. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Alrighty. Sounds like we're all good. Thank you too, Jeff. Appreciate you all taking the time to be here and learn a little bit about the proposal process. If you have a group that you're working with and you need some help through that process, or you need a refresher on any of these items and how to interface with them, I'm happy to help. Otherwise, be well, and we'll talk to you this time next week. Have a good one, everybody.